So demand is a really important factor. So obviously there needs to be demand in a market for it to work. So the law of demand is a really important concept, and it really tells us how willing and able a consumer is to buy a type of product at a certain price. So as your price goes up, the quantity demanded also goes down. So it's inversely related. So this is the law of demand here, by the way. So these two sentences. So as the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down, which makes sense. So if something is being more expensive, you're going to be less willing to buy it. And as something becomes cheaper, you're going to be more willing to buy it. And that applies to pretty much everyone. And why does that happen? Well, there's quite a few effects. So first is the income effect. So as your price increases, people aren't able to afford it as much. So that's the income effect. So only the rich people would buy it as the price becomes too high. Perceived utility. So next, is it really worth that much? So like I said earlier with the bubble tea example, we assign a worth to each product that we're gonna buy. And we have to think about whether it's worth that much. So for example, let's say I assigned a value of $10 for the mango bubble tea earlier. If a toucher decided to price the mango bubble tea for $10, I would buy it. But if the pearl milk tea was $10, I probably won't. That's more than what I value it for. So that's perceived utility. So is it worth that much? So as the price increases, people start to wonder if it's really worth that much anymore. Next, diminishing marginal utility. So diminishing marginal utility is about whether you think it's still... So it's about how many you buy, for example. So for example, let's say we have ice creams on a summer day, right? If you eat one, you're really happy, you really enjoy it. But the more you eat, the less satisfaction you get from it. So the more you eat, you might start feeling sick, you might start feeling like you don't really like ice cream anymore. So that's pretty much the concept here. So diminishing marginal utility is the more you buy, the less satisfaction you start to get. So that's why even if price increases, you start to have less satisfaction. Substitution effect. So this is another important concept. So this, for example, this is basically when as the price of a product increases, you start to look for other substitutes. So for example, egg prices are getting really high, right? So what people might do is they might be like, well, egg prices are really high, but chicken prices are actually kind of low. So they might look for the substitutes instead. Okay, so now let's talk about the law of supply. Oh, I want to highlight one more thing. So this curve is downward sloping. So as the price increases, quantity demanded is really low. As the price decreases, quantity demanded is really high. Okay, next is supply. And supply is all about how willing and able suppliers are to supply a good or service at different prices. So this is the law of supply here. So as the price increases, the quantity supplied also increases, and as the price goes down, the quantity supplied also goes down. So it pretty much says that they are directly proportional. So a higher price means that suppliers want to produce more. And why is that? It's all about profits. So they want to make profits. So if prices are high, so if the selling price is high, there's a greater margin of profit. Whereas if the selling price is low, there's a lower margin of profit. Here is the supply curve. So it's upward sloping. So a low price means that there's a low quantity sold, and a high price means that there's a high quantity sold. Okay, so now let's discuss the markets and government intervention. So when we talk about a market, it's pretty much demand and supply working together. So here is an example of a great demand and supply curve. And this point labeled E here is called the equilibrium. So the equilibrium is literally the point where the quantity supplied is equal to the quantity demanded, and the market is, there's like literally no shortage, no surplus. So shortage, too little produced, so demand is more than supply, and surplus is too much produced, demand less than supply. So we want to make sure demand and supply are equal. We'll talk about graphing and everything later on as well. So a little bit about demand and supply graphs. So shortages, if there is a shortage, it means that suppliers see an opportunity to get more money. So shortage usually means that prices go up. They can raise the price as well because of that shortage. If there's a surplus, suppliers want to get rid of the extra stock, so the extra stock that they have, and they actually just lower the price instead. Okay, so graphing. So we need to really be mindful of the difference between a movement in the demand and supply curve and a shift in the demand and supply curve. So a shift happens if something other than the price of that product changes. So this is called a microeconomic factor of demand or supply. So it's just a fancy word of saying it. So for example here, demand curve has shifted right, which means that at any given price, there is more demand. And we can say it's also increased or decreased. So here, here it's decreased. So demand has shifted left, meaning that there is less demand at any given price. Okay, let me go back. All right, so this is pretty much a summary of shifts and movements. Just remember, movements are because of price-related factors. So it's literally the price of that specific good or service changing, whereas shift is all about other non-price related factors. So this is an example of a SAC or exam question. So let's say there's strong economic activity through HL1, and that results in more income. So if there are more incomes, remember, more incomes means that more people are able to afford ice cream. So demand shifts right. So at any given price of ice cream, more people are willing and able to buy it. Next, at the old equilibrium price, so you can see the dotted line extended, there is a shortage. So supply is here, demand is here, there's a shortage. So suppliers decide to raise their prices, so to up here to P2 to counteract that shortage and make more profits. So this results in a new equilibrium at a greater price and a higher quantity sold. So that's pretty much what happens in the ice cream market. So this is another one to think about. So milk prices. Milk becomes cheaper, and how would that affect ice cream market? So remember, milk, you need milk to produce ice cream. So if milk is cheaper to buy, it probably is cheaper to make ice cream as well. Ooh. So that means, I should also draw the graph, that means supply shifts right here. Okay, at the old price, there is a surplus. So I should label this as supply 2. Okay, so there's a surplus at the old price. This means that because of the surplus, suppliers lower their prices to clear their stock. This results in a new quantity supplied. Oh, terrible writing here. And at a lower price. There we go. There we go. All right, so that's it. So that's how this would affect the ice cream market. So at the end of the day, there will be more ice cream sold, but at a lower price.